Hey everybody, it's Alan from Woodcrest Bonsai. In this video I'm going to begin to plant the single trunk bald cypress in the ground. And the vast majority of them have been cut back at about 6 or 8 inches. So we've got the cut back here, and we see the tree. And here's another one that's had 2 major cutbacks. And there are a couple that never got cut back. But I'm going to put these guys in the ground, and that will do a number of different things. First, it will free up some bench space, because this bench is almost brand new, and for some reason it's almost entirely filled already. It's like, where did all these trees come from? So, almost entirely filled. And then in the back I have the old bench that I'm still working on getting the trees off of there. But boy, that's been a slow process. So if we look here, here is the fusion bald cypress, where I took 8, 10, 12, and sometimes less than that, seedlings, and tie them together in the hopes that the trunks will fuse. And then when all this fuses, you're going to have a trunk 3 or 4 inches across in much less time than it will take for the single trunk guys. And as you can see, I've sort of reduced the number of trees on that old bench, but it's been slow. It's been so slow. I may put some of these guys in the ground too. If I'm not mistaken, there is one. Yes, right here. Hiding right there. That is also a single trunk that has never been trimmed. So I'm going to put him in the ground and never trim it. I mean, like not never. And here's a twin trunk. That was my very first attempt at fusion, but they all died with these two. So I may give them the opportunity to grow in the ground too. So that's the first positive part of putting these in the ground. Well, no, I mean the biggest positive part of putting these in the ground is they're going to be able to grow much more extensively. The root systems will be able to grow much more extensively, and therefore so will the trunk on the top. And then secondly, it'll free up bench space. And thirdly, I'll have the pots back, because I bought 100 6-inch bulb pans and 100 8-inch bulb pans, and I'm out. I used them all. And once again, it's like, where? How did that happen? So I need the pods. So it's a triple win. It's a win-win-win. Bigger trees with more extensive root systems, some bench space freed up, and I'll have the pots that I can put even more stuff in. And I'm going to pause, and then I'm going to show you where I'm going to put them. So I am going to plant the bald cypress directly in front of this bench. And once again, this bench is also just so totally loaded with stuff. I have some huge Ilex shillings that I dug out of the ground a couple years ago, and mixed with little mame. I have a whole bunch of desert rose. But the bald cypress are all going to go along all the way down to the end. And if I'm not mistaken, these are 8-foot sections. So we have 1, these are 6-foot sections. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 30 feet. And yes, you'll say, oh man, there's a whole bunch of weeds there. But I don't keep my bonsai garden weed free. I don't have the time. And I don't find it all that necessary. I don't need to be walking around Disneyland. And digging these weeds up is going to be fairly simple. So that's going to be the process for today. And I'm doing this now for a couple of different reasons. Number one is that even though we're in the first week of May, I guess pushing into the second week of May, the rainy season has already begun. Typically the rainy season in Florida begins about the 1st of June, usually a little before that, the last week in May. But we've had 2 really good days of rain that were typical rainy season rain, afternoon thunderstorms. Oh, and it was so welcome because April was one of the driest Aprils that I remember, and I've been here 50 years. So now that the rainy season has begun, these guys will be able to take advantage of that. And of course, I water all my bonsai on the bench, so the trees, once they're in the ground, will also get water from the hose, depending a lot on just how much it does rain. When it really rains a lot, I still need to water my bonsai. I may not need to water the day it rains, depending on just how much rain we get. But once the bald cypress are established in the ground, and if we start to get really good wet rainy season, then they'll never need supplemental water. In a bonsai pot, that's a whole nother story. I never rely on rain more than maybe one day, and I'm always checking for water. So anyway, that's the story. Another thing I'm going to do is I have PVC in the ground, and these are my guides for my hose. As you can see right there, I water with a nozzle at the end of a hose, and I have PVC uprights on either side of my cinder blocks. And that's because PVC is much kinder to the hose than scraping it along the really rough cinder blocks. So I'm going to take this piece and bring it out to somewhere about here, so that when it guides the hose, it won't encroach on the first bald cypress. So that's the plan for today. And I may not get it all done, I'm 69 in a month, and my body says, after about an hour of working, it says, okay, that's enough. And I'm perfectly okay with that. So however many I get done will be fine with me. So that's the plan for today. So let's get started. That didn't take long. So I did not go the whole length. You can see my shovel and my rake and my, I don't know what that is, grub hoe, whatever. And then I did the super duper high-tech method of deciding where to place the trees. And that is, I took the end of the shovel and I poked it into the ground. And you can't get any more high-tech than that. And this is very rich soil, because before I expanded my bonsai collection as extensively as I have, these were beds that I raised vegetables in, basically in the same formation. So instead of a bench full of bonsai, some are finished, some are not. Some are the huge trees that I dug out of the ground. But that was all beds for vegetables, and I was always adding organic compost, mainly in the form of the leaves that I rake up in my own yard. So there we go. So now, if I counted correctly, I have 14 holes. And lo and behold, I have 14 trees. And if we look, and I have a whole bunch of pots that I used to grow flowers in, and they're all just sitting under the benches, pretty much dormant. But if we look, all I did was rake all the debris here. There is another 12 feet of space where I could put more trees, and I do have more trees. And I don't think I've ever actually showed them to you. So let's do that right now. So this is a whole nother batch of bald cypress that I just didn't have space on the other bench. And these are in far more shade. And they're growing like they're in more shade. But they're exactly the same age, and they have similar trunk sizes. And because that section that I have not dug yet is actually also shaded, so these guys are shaded from a tree that's that way. So the afternoon sun comes in this way. So these guys are in a lot of shade right now because it's early morning. And then by about noon, they start to get more sun. And then the afternoon sun comes this way. So they get a lot of afternoon sun. And that's exactly the same scenario as the section that I have not dug up yet. So I'm going to concentrate on getting the other guys off the other bench into the ground. And then we'll work on these guys here. As you can see, these guys here have some variation, much more than the other guys. So here's a really, really thin little one. And then right next to it is one that's pretty thick, that has been cut back. Some of them have not really been cut back all that much. But that's for the next phase. So I certainly have my share of bald cypress. So I have some weed mat that I'm going to put down underneath the roots of the tree to inhibit the roots from going straight down. This weed mat is exactly the same as my backdrop, which I hate because all this fuzziness on the backdrop catches every single leaf. These are all the catkins from when the oaks flowered and it was super windy. And it's just, I don't know. And then it's got the green lines. And of course, this is just a continuation of the same thing. This is, I don't know how much it is. Here, what does it say here? I can't really read it. I think it's 100 feet. Anyway, regardless. So for some unknown reason, the guides, these are great guides to cut it with, but they're not even consistent. So here we've got this green right at the edge, and if we go to this green all the way to the edge, that's a foot. But then this is like 13 inches, and this one's only 9. And then this is a foot, so who knows. But my plan is to do about a 1 by 1, and it doesn't need to be perfect. And it does have the fuzzy side, and I think I'm going to put the fuzzy side down. So many people that do this use like ceramic tiles. And obviously a ceramic tile is completely impervious. There's no way roots are moving through a ceramic tile. But I think by the same token, this would be enough of an inhibitor to keep the tree from really sending down a tremendous amount of aggressive roots straight down. So I'm going to cut these into hopefully close to 12 by 12 squares. I had thought of just making a whole roll, make one gigantic long, so basically cut it to here for the 12-inch width, and then I think it's 30 feet, right? Do 30 feet of just that one cut. But then digging them up is going to be very difficult, because when you pull one, the one next to it, because they are going to root through this a little bit, is going to come with. So I've decided to make individual squares, so there'll be a space in between each tree. And I think that's going to be a whole lot easier to dig them up as individuals when it's time to do that. So I'm going to, since this one is 9 here and this one is 13, I'm going to chop it to about there. And the green will still give me a good guide. So that's the next step. Get some square pieces of weed mat to put down before I plant the trees. So I now have 4 squares of the weed mat that are close to 12 by 12. Doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, if I'm going to space my trees based on just jamming the end of a shovel into the ground, then these guys definitely don't need to be perfect. And if you're wondering what they're sitting on, these are Schilling's holly that are actually growing in cinder blocks that are my stock plants. I take my cuttings from here. And one day I was going to dig them up. This year I was going to dig them up and turn them into pre-bonsai, but that never happened. And I don't think it's that big of a deal. So now I guess I'm going to work 4 at a time. So now I'm going to dig up, need to get my wheelbarrow, and then we'll see what happens. So here's a little comic relief. I excavated an artifact. So you can see I'm digging down, and I've dug about 4 feet. Still need more to go, but I found this pot in the soil, just like down in like that. I'm digging and I'm looking and saying, what is that thing? It was a tiny bonsai pot that apparently whatever plant was in it was pushed off the bench, and it disappeared into the weeds and or leaves. So that's pretty comical. So I have a new pot, yay! Funny. Okay, so now you can see I've dug a certain distance down, and it's still pretty rough because I found that pot and I just wanted to share it. So the next step is to rake it off flat. And once again, my super duper high-tech method of deciding if I've dug down enough is to just bring a pot over and stick it on top of this soil. And I want the top of the soil that's in the pot to be basically just barely below the soil that we're going to bury it with. So I'm going to continue to rake this out nice and flat, and then we'll bring our first plant over. And I got a new pot. So here we go. Here's the first tree. And if you watched any of my other videos, when I did an update on these guys, this was the slowpoke. This guy was, we have this strange plant here living in this pot, which we can move. Because these guys, if they grow, they're going to hit the bench. But I'm not going to let them grow. But that looks pretty good for soil. I think that looks very good for soil. So, the next thing to do is to get my mat like this. And then I'm going to trim up the plant. I'm going to do the trimming up above, because once they're in the ground, cutting them is going to affect my back. So I have to be out of my mind even be doing this. So here's tree number 1, and I'm going to trim it. And I'm holding my camera just in midair, so I apologize for the wobbliness. But I only want 1 leader. So I'm going to take this one off, and I'm going to use my concave cutters, I think. And then take these 2 guys off, and then cut the leader. So it's coming like this and then over, so I want it to come over this way. So I'm going to cut it to a leaf that's pointing in that direction. And why don't I put it in the camera? Thank God I don't chew gum, because then I wouldn't be able to walk. So there we go. This is a stump. And it's, as you can see, it's also leaning in the pot. So I'm going to plant it more upright like that. And I'm going to do that to all of these. And I think I'm going to leave this guy as a sacrifice branch just to see what happens. And then we're going to put it in the ground. So I'm going to give it one more test. Oh, well, that was good. Let's just drop it from 2 feet. Okay, so the test is over. Oh, how do the roots look? They look beautiful. Look at how super healthy those roots are. And very little circling roots. That was not my intention to drop it like that, because now I've got to hurry to get this guy back covered up. Ay, 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 ay. And I certainly hadn't planned on manipulating the roots of any of these. But I do believe that that's good. He's centered in the weed mat. I was able to feather some roots out. And he's a little closer to straight. And so now some of the soil that I dug out of there. You probably couldn't hear me, so I said there's some of the soil that I dug out of there. I think it needs to be higher. Okay, there we go. Still leaning, but at this point, probably don't want to use the F word, but my brain is saying the F word. Okay, so now if planting all of these is going to be as much of a fiasco as this one, this is going to be a very interesting video. How about if I just do the rest of the work and then I come back and show you the finished product? What a joke. Holy cow. But that's basically the deal, except for the part where you drop the tree and it falls out of the pot. So rake the next section flat, which we've got, right here. Then bring another tree, take it to the workbench, trim it way back so there's only 1 liter. Put the weed mat underneath and then backfill it with soil. And we're going to go, I don't know how far I'm going to get, because I'm starting to get angry at myself for being so fumble-fingered. Ugh. So anyway, I'm going to try to get, 4 or 5 more. And then I may have to just go in and have some breakfast. There's always tomorrow. Okay, I'm back. Because I wanted to show you that the first one was an 8-inch bulb pan. This next one is a 6-inch bulb pan. And I already chopped it way back. So down goes the mat. Take the tree out of the pot without trying to drop it. And we've got great roots. Got really nice roots. And, you know, in a perfect world, I'd like to take some of these circling roots and work them out a little bit. But I don't want to do too much root manipulation because I don't want the tree to suffer. So, same thing, stick him down on there. Give some of these circling roots a chance to move out into the soil instead of circling. And then of course I've left my shovel over here. Okay. Then so there's number 2. And I'm going to alternate with 8-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, 6-inch, just to experiment a little bit. And I think what I can do is I took the soil that was in here and put it in my wheelbarrow. And I want to show you my wheelbarrow because it's just classic. You're going to love it. So here it is. An at least 40-year-old wheelbarrow. And it's a Franken barrow. There's a crack that's been repaired there. There's a massive crack right here where I was trying to move a huge rock that was way too heavy and the wheelbarrow fell over and the rock just smashed. So this thing is, here's another crack that hasn't even been repaired. So this thing is so old and crusty, but you know, it still works. And both of the handles rotted. So I went to buy new handles and they were $20. So I just took a 2x4 and just ripped it down the middle so you can see there's no actual handle. But you know what? It works perfectly for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this soil, because I already have another indentation, and then take this soil and put it over there and just leave the soil in the wheelbarrow for the end. There's no reason to dig it into the wheelbarrow, then take it out of the wheelbarrow, and I can just move it from here to here. So the next tree is going to be an 8-inch pot, and it's going basically, you know, right about in here. And then we'll just take the soil from over here and backfill. So now we're going to just wait until the finished product. I just wanted to show off my wheelbarrow. So I ended up putting 8 into the ground, which was 2 sets of weed mat. I cut the weed mat into 4 sections of 12 by 12, so I did that twice. So here they are. Some are a little fuller than others. This one is an experiment because it's never been cut back, and it actually does have the largest trunk. It's hard to see, but it does have the largest trunk. And I also put it in a place where I'm going to let this one grow. This one could get 8 or 10 feet, but it's not really going to encroach on these trees because I'll be able to work around it. And then 3 more that I chopped way back. And then the last thing I want to do is to water them in. And I water all my bonsai with just a nozzle at the end of the hose. And so here's the nozzle. And you've also noticed that I've made a little moat around each tree. So I want that water to sit in that moat and have it concentrate on the root ball. The root ball of these guys was quite wet already, so it's probably not that big of an issue. But you notice, I want that, should have pulled the hose a little better. I want that root ball to remain moist. So I always make a little moat like this around anything I plant, even flowers. This helps concentrate the water to the roots of the tree or the plant, whatever it is. Doesn't matter whether it's zinnias or marigolds or bald cypress. I have some elms in the ground too. Of course, they are so old. So there we go. And this is really nice, rich soil. So I'm looking for great things from these guys. So except for the one that's really tall, they will all be cut back very regularly. So as soon as they get another 6 inches high, I'll chop back 5 inches of it and just leave an inch, like I've done here on this one. Can we even see it? Where main trunk, and then just about an inch, and then just about an inch again. So when it grows up into here, cut that back to another inch. Except for this one that we're going to allow to go crazy. And of course, I have a lot more to go, but I'm pretty happy with this, and my body is rebelling. My back is beginning to hurt, and I'm pretty happy because my super duper high-tech punching holes into the ground to determine spacing actually worked pretty well. So this is 8, and if I count the holes that are remaining, I've got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and that's how many trees I've got. So it was perfect. The spacing is perfect. Keep them moist. Now that the rainy season has started a little bit early, if we get good rain, it shouldn't even be that big of an issue. Keep them cut back. I will give them some fertilizer too, but not right now. I don't want to stress them with fertilizer. And of course the weeds will return. It's not like it's going to stay weed free forever. So hopefully I'll be able to keep the weeds at check, at bay. But I don't think it's really that big of a deal. The weeds that we did have before I dug this all up, these trees are just going to continue to grow regardless of the presence of those kind of weeds. Because, you know, when you go out into the swamps and you dig these guys out of the swamp, they're competing with weeds out there too. So I guess I'm making giant excuses for why I'm not going to pull the weeds. Anyway. And I've never done this. I've been doing bonsai 40 years. I have never in my life, in my entire bonsai time, planted bald cypress in the ground. So this is all new to me too. So we're all going to be learning together. So if you want to see these guys continue to grow and see just what happens over the course of the next summer here, then please subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Leave a like if you like this video, especially if you liked my wheelbarrow. I love my wheelbarrow, to tell you the truth. Because, I mean, 40 years ago, that thing was $30. Now they're like $150. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll just go buy a new one. It's like, what? And even the handles were 20 bucks each. So, anyway, let's get off the wheelbarrow. So thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to the experiment continuing, and I will make my best effort to get the rest of them planted within the next day or two. You know, I've got so much other stuff going on. But I am happy with the results for these 8. So once again, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment if you'd like. And thank you so much for watching Woodcrest Bonsai.